Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Sejanus, his fall, and we get to hear from Arruntius again today in Act 4, Scene 5. Now, if we didn't know better, we would think that Lepidus was setting Arruntius up to say some potentially treasonous things, but the two of them are on the same side. And they have been talking in this scene about how messed up the state is. All these terrible things are happening. They are pretty much the only ones left who are still free of the Agrippina group because Nero was marched off to banishment in front of them, and Drusus has been imprisoned, and Agrippina is like under house arrest kind of a thing. So they're like, these are dangerous times and there's really bad stuff happening. And Lepidus talked about how quickly the will of the people change, because just a couple weeks ago, if the heirs to the throne had been imprisoned, the general population would have stood up and said, hey, there's something wrong going on here. But now people are just kind of letting it happen. So they're like, this isn't great. But Arruntius has been arguing that, we need to look at this, we need to acknowledge these things. And Lepidus was like, no, we don't. We can just sort of let it go. And Arruntius is like, how do you just ignore all of this stuff? And Lepidus is like, well, he is the emperor, so we just kind of got to go with what he says. And Arruntius responds by saying, he is our monster, forfeited to vice, so far as no racked virtue can redeem him. His loathed person fouler than all crimes. An emperor only in his lusts, retired from all regard of his own fame or Rome's into an obscure island where he lives acting his tragedies with a comic face amidst his rout of Chaldees, spending hours, days, weeks, and months in the unkind abuse of grave astrology to the bane of men, casting the scope of men's nativities, and having found aught worthy in their fortune, kill or precipitate them in the sea, and boast he can mock fate. Nay, muse not. These are far from ends of evil, scarce degrees. He hath his slaughterhouse at Capri, where he doth study murder as an art, and they are dearest in his grace that can devise the deepest tortures. Thither, too, he hath his boys and beauteous girls taken up out of our noblest houses, the best formed, best nurtured, and most modest. What's their good serves to provoke his bad. Some are allured, some threatened, others by their friends detained, are ravished hence like captives, and in sight of their most grieved parents dealt away unto his spin trees, celeries, and slaves, masters of strange and new commented lusts, for which wise nature hath not left a name. To this, what most strikes us and bleeding Rome, he is, with all his craft, become the ward to his own vassal, a stale catamite, whom he upon our low and suffering necks hath raised from excrement to side the gods, and have his proper sacrifice in Rome, which Jove beholds, and yet will sooner rive a senseless oak with thunder than his trunk. So if you want to talk about some treasonous statements, this monologue is full of it. He's not pulling any punches in this particular monologue, talking about how horrible Tiberius is. He starts out calling him a monster. He's not our prince. he's our monster. And he's like, he's squirreled himself away onto this little island where he studies torture and he studies murder, and the people around him, like if anybody gets out of line, he boasts that he can just kill them or drop them into the sea, and the fates be darned, all that sort of thing. He's like, yeah, he thinks that he can do whatever, and the people that he keeps closest to him and holds in the highest regard are the most conniving ones that can think up the worst kind of tortures. And even beyond that, he's taking young men and women from our community, the ones of noblest birth, the most beautiful ones, and he's stealing them away and selling them into slavery and torturing and abusing them, all of these sorts of things, like right in front of their parents. And everybody knows that this is happening. He's like, there isn't a word bad enough to describe what Tiberius is doing and how he is undoing Rome. And then to sort of like put a nice little bookend on it, because he started the scene yelling at Jove for not paying attention. He's like, the gods see all of this that's happening, and they're going to strike down a tree, but they're not going to strike down Tiberius. Like, this makes no sense. But before he can continue, or before Lepidus can say anything about this, and like this is a good thing that he and Lepidus are on the same side as he's saying all of these things, because these are very, very bad things that he's saying about Tiberius. So before Lepidus can respond to that, Minucius, Laco, and Pomponius enter, and they each have various letters, and they're like, well, I just got this one. They're like, well, I just got this one. And Arruntius and Lepidus step back a little bit. They're like, oh, they're talking about word that they've gotten from Caesar. Because remember, Caesar is off on the island of Capri. They're like, oh, they're talking about news that they've gotten from him. Let's just listen in and see what they say. So Minucius, Laco, and Pomponius enter, and they're talking about how none of their letters match. They're all getting different information. One of them says that Sejanus is sick. One of them says that Tiberius is returning right now. One of them says that Tiberius is sick and won't be returning for a while. One of them says that Sejanus is now held in even higher regard. The next one says that he wants him killed. Like, they can't make heads or tails out of any of this that they've been written. They're like, we don't know whose orders to follow, because we don't know like who's being held in favor right now, because none of this makes any sense. There's no consistency in all of these letters that we're getting. And then eventually Terentius enters, and they're like, oh, let's go talk to him. He's gonna know what's going on, and we can figure it all out. So they go over to talk to them, and the focus shifts back over to Arruntius and Lepidus is gonna have some thoughts this time on everything that they have just witnessed, and we will get to hear all of that in the form of a monologue tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Mwah.